Hello, Neil Bertrando here with RT Permaculture based out of Reno, Nevada. And I'm here today to talk to you about low-tech erosion controls. And specifically, we're looking today at a technique called a media luna. Media luna comes from the term half moon, right? So luna for moon, media for half. And the idea is that it is literally shaped like a half moon. So we have a couple of different options. So the media luna can be shaped like a half moon with the tips facing down the hill, as in this case. We have a water drainage that's coming down this way. Or it can be shaped with the tips facing up the hill like this. And that is mimicking the shape of an alluvial fan. So the tips down are sheet flow concentrating structures, and the tips up are sheet flow spreading structures. So the tips up, the water comes in, and then it gets spread out. And the idea is that this is mimicking a ridge in the landscape. The sheet flow concentrating structures, the water comes in this way, and it gets backed up behind the media luna and infiltrates into the site, as well as being concentrated and transitioning slightly into channel flow. And this is used higher in the landscape to protect the uplands from head cuts or channels that are moving up higher into the landscape. And so what we've chosen to do in this location is to build a media luna with the tips down to concentrate water into this kind of channelized flow that's beginning here, and take all this sheet flow. And while it concentrates water, it's also slowing the flow of water down and infiltrating the water into the site. So it's actually taking some of the pressure off of the channelizing that's already occurring here and the head cuts that are occurring, and smoothing out that transition from sheet flow to channelized flow. And so what we've done is we measured out a contour in the landscape, and you can see the flags there. And then we measured 6 feet up from that contour across the area. And we planted cuttings, pieces of prickly pear cactus. We dug a trench in, and we put the cuttings in, about 3 to 6 inches under the ground, laid some, very flat on their sides, so they have a lot of contact with the soil surface. And cactus is very easy to propagate with cuttings. It's got a lot of water in it, and it will just root out of any node, even where the spines are coming out. And so we took all the cactus that we had and we put it as far out as we could on this media luna structure, and put a couple rows of it into here. And so the media luna can be built with rocks. That's the most common way the structure is built, is with rocks. But you can also build it with cuttings of brush and woody debris, or you can build it with living plant materials, cuttings from living plant materials that are relevant and specific to your site location and application. So, prickly pear, Puntia species cactus, and many cactus are very easy to do cuttings in the desert because they have so much water in them, and you don't have to wait for a rainy season. We did this right before the rainy season with the idea that it would be the best time to do it. So this was actually built in November, just before the rain started. And the prickly pears will then, once they root into the ground, they will actually grow up into a hedgerow and create a significant amount of wildlife habitat. They're at a location where water is already concentrating in the landscape, and so they're slowing the water down, spreading it out, and sinking it in uphill from them, and smoothing the transition of that concentration of water in the landscape from a rill and gully type of situation that is eroding up the landscape into one where that head cut has been stabilized by the media luna, and the vegetation is being supported by the flow of water, and it creates a more natural transition that stops the erosion and the cutting in the landscape, while also creating wildlife habitat and valuable resources.
Neil, this is phenomenal. Like, you've taken a tool that normally is done with rock, and yet by swapping out with prickly pear cactus, you've now created almost an instant hedge. You're not waiting for recruitment. You're using the plant material itself as both the structured material, but also it'll grow up around it. Was this something that you innovated? Was this something you saw in another situation, or how did this come to be?
I got turned on to this through the work of Steve Carson and Bill Zedike. I went to a workshop in southern Arizona, near the Arizona-Mexico border near Nogales. And they had done this successfully in several locations. And one area had turned into a nice prickly pear cactus hedge, and another one had turned into some kind of extensive habitat for some birds and some rodents and things like that. So, they had gained a lot of both wildlife value and vegetative productivity while, catching a bunch of sediment and slowing down the water in the landscape. And so we took that and actually we collected these prickly pear on the drive between the house I was staying at during this project and the arrival at the site. So it was kind of like, oh, there's some material, and that they look like big prickly pear cactuses with big fruits on them. So they look like quality ones that we want to have in our landscape. And we just pulled over on the side of the road, picked off some cuttings and put them in the back of the truck and brought them to build this, because I knew that we had wanted to build some media luna and other structures on the site. So it was kind of I've seen it before. Here's the opportunity on the way. Let's get stuff and just put it together right away.
Phenomenal. It's what I love about this course that you and Jeffrey Adams from Terra Sophia are putting together is these are structures, these are materials that we can find anywhere. These are the brush and mineral structures. And where do you find brush and where do you find mineral? Everywhere you look. And to come to a site and to be looking at materials on the drive, being like, oh, we can use that and we can use that and we can use that over there. I feel like if we were ever to create like a clickbait title for something to do with this, it would be like nurserymen hate them. Three tips that, I think this is really the power and the strength of this is you're using natural materials to work against some of the erosive situations that are created mostly due to human intervention or lack of intervention, and giving these landscapes a chance to actually reestablish themselves. When you take a look at this, especially in terms of prickly pear growing time, is this something that you're expecting to see as a prickly pear hedge in 4 years, in 5 years? I'm not completely familiar with the speed at which it grows, but what's your thoughts about that?
As it's becoming a hedge, that's going to be several years for sure. This was done in Southern California, so if it has enough water, it's gonna grow relatively fast because they have long growing seasons and short cold seasons. But it's still gonna, I would guess, 4 or 5 years before it becomes any sort of hedge. But once it gets roots in the ground and it's up, a pad or two, a foot or two into the air, it's gonna start to really create some habitat and some microclimates, and it's gonna quickly be slowing the water. So all of it's not going to reach its optimum endpoint for several years, but it will immediately start to have some effect.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing this project. Thanks so much for sharing this technique. And for anybody who's watching and interested, there's an amazing opportunity to learn from Neil as well as Jeffrey Adams and to understand these techniques, to put them into the landscape. So if you're a rancher, you're a land manager, you're a farmer, you're a homesteader, if you're dealing with erosion, if you're dealing with wildfire damage, if you're dealing with drought or water restrictions, these are incredible tools to have in your land managing toolbox to be able to bring out and use in short and simple order. So if you are interested, do check out the course at regenerativeliving.online called Low Tech Erosion Control. We'll see you in the next video.